Hey there, welcome back to Total Geek Live Baltimore Presents. I'm Baltimore, and today I am bringing you the rise and fall of the Shi'ar Empire. Wow. Yep, I'm talking about the year-long space epic that the Uncanny X-Men went on. This was back in 2006, and we had Ed Brubaker who was writing, and Billy Tan who was doing the art for it, which was stunning and gorgeous and beautiful. I really loved it. But this was really interesting because it took a team of X-Men out of Earth for a year, 12 issues, and it was actually really fun. You had a powerless Professor Xavier who could still walk, leading a team of X-Men out into space, and basically to get at the genesis of this story, you start with Deadly Genesis. And if you don't know about this, we all know about the all-new, all-different X-Men who come in to save the original X-Men from Krakoa. But what you didn't know is that Xavier had brought a team together first to go save them, but they all died. Wink, wink. Except for two of them, actually. So two of the four, half of them died. But the people who did survive ended up being the long talked about, often, pondered third Summers brother, which ends up being Gabriel Summers, who is Vulcan. And then you have Darwin, who is basically a mutant who can hyper-evolve into anything to save himself or to live or, whatever. So basically the two of them were holding on to dear life, clinging, to life in space. And then once House of M happened and the empowerment of all the mutants, basically they were jump-started and brought back to life. And they are in a series called Deadly Genesis, which talks about their trials and tribulations. So basically Vulcan wants to know what the heck happened to him. Why was he... what happened to him? He didn't know how he was born. Basically everyone knew that Havoc and Cyclops were brothers when their parents were abducted by the Shi'ar by Deken, the Emperor, and that the wife died. Catherine died, and then Corsair, the father, basically goes and starts the Starjammers and as a pirate, trying to fight the good fight. And then they let Havoc and Cyclops on Earth. So we get to wondering, like, how is Vulcan alive? We never saw how he was born, but what it turns out is that she was pregnant. And while she was pregnant, the kin ripped the baby from her womb as she was dying and then put her into a Shi'ar hyperbolic chamber that gestated him and grew him up. Yeah, superhero science, space, galactic empires, all of it. And he ends up being a slave for, quite a long time and is somehow able to come back to Earth, wanting to find his brothers. And Xavier finds him and he sends him off to save the X-Men with little training, and they all die. So anyway, that's that whole Deadly Genesis story. So Vulcan has gone to tear the Shi'ar Empire. He can survive in space, and he's heading right up there. And Xavier needs to take care of this. He needs to, warn Lilandra, take care of her, and then, fix this mistake. So he grabs a team of X-Men and goes up there. And that includes Warpath, Havoc, Polaris, Rachel as Marvel Girl, and Darwin, and Nightcrawler. So all of them have to steal a starship from the Shi'ar Star Cruiser and get up and out and head to Shi'ar space. What they realize after they go through the first Stargate, the first jump gate, is that Vulcan is destroying everyone that's after that. So they're kind of stuck in space. They're going to have to go the long way, the slow way. However, Vulcan can just go right on through. So it's a pretty big challenge, and they have to kind of get there. And one of the really interesting things about this year-long epic is every third issue highlighted Vulcan's journey, his progress, kind of highlighted where he was, what he was going through, and I think for the purposes of this, I'll just kind of treat those as one story and then go back and do the whole kind of summary of that. So he kind of recaps his birth, like I told you before, and his time in the slave world. And then when he actually gets to, the Shi'ar space, he's destroyed Shi'ar star cruisers, and he takes one. He actually gets into Shi'ar space and is confronted by the Imperial Guard, who he thoroughly mops to the floor, with the exception of Gladiator, who is, deservedly giving him a difficult time to, fight. And Gladiator actually, takes out his eye, so Vulcan has only one eye. Anyway, so Vulcan finally gets to the Shi'ar Empire. He wants to kill D'Ken, but then he finds out that D'Ken is dead, that D'Ken is no longer around. So he has to figure out, well, what is his revenge trip now? And he kind of decides that he meets up with Deathbird, which is one of the sisters of D'Ken, and she is bloodthirsty and crazy, and so is he. So they kind of like a match made in Psycho Heaven. And he decides he's going to try to revive D'Ken, and he meets with a secret faction of Shi'ar, who are holding the comatose body of D'Ken there and hoping for a resurrection or something. And Vulcan, using his somewhat ambiguous energy manipulation powers, is able to restore D'Ken, and basically D'Ken thanks him for this and offers Deathbird as the wife for Vulcan. And Vulcan doesn't take too much hesitation on that, because crazy likes crazy. But all the while, he wants to kill D'Ken himself. He wants to revive him so he knows what's going on, and then kill him for what he did. And that's kind of a prophetic, story. I very much get the pathos about that. And so that's where he ends up at that point. So to go back, we talk about all the trials and tribulations that the X-Men go through trying to get to the Shi'ar space in time. And it's a really fun ride. I really love the storyline with them, because you have a team of X-Men that are kind of mixed in history, and they don't often get to interact with each other. You have Rachel and Nightcrawler, who've been on teams before, a long time before, and Havoc, Polaris, who've been on again, off again, on again, off again, on again, off again. So those were kind of fun. But then you have, the interactions with Warpath and with Darwin, and those are kind of fun interactions. You have, new life for Warpath, which I really liked. I thought he was really great in this. And Darwin got a lot of play in here too, and really interesting, use of his powers, I thought. So that was really exciting. And I particularly liked it, Rachel has had I've always really liked Rachel. She's kind of my Phoenix if I was going to have to choose. Don't hate me. But I've always loved her. I always thought she was interesting. I think what really speaks to me about her is I love the idea of children trying to live up to their parents. If they have a parent who's famous or infamous for something, and they have to kind of stand in their own shoes, and what that kind of means to it. And so I've always kind of appreciated and liked that aspect of Rachel. But here she is. She's basically witnessed all of the Grey family, the Jean Grey story side of her family, all being eliminated by the Shi'ar Death Commandos, who have decided that anyone with a Jean Grey genome was going to be eliminated they didn't want to take the chance on a new Phoenix host. But they left Rachel with a huge tattoo on her back of a phoenix, and that was their mark, so they could follow her, track her, do whatever they wanted to her, whenever they wanted. And it was a really chilling issue that the Greys all died in, called End of Greys. You should actually look up that issue. So she's on this, trying to discover, what this means for her. She wants to kind of figure out what kind of phoenix is left for her in this world. And she's training more with her powers with Xavier. Even though he doesn't have powers, he still has the knowledge of everything. And so they're kind of trying to figure out what this means. And then, her back tattoo kind of flares up. She realizes that something's wrong. So she's trying to kind of wary to get out of this whatever's going to happen to her. So the Shi'ar enlist a guy named Corvus, who is a wielder of a Blade of the Phoenix, which is a super oversized sword. And I get that people like them. I'm not really a huge fan of them. I think they're kind of just comically strange. But there you go, Corvus, cool, Shi'ar looking guy, ends up with, Echo of the Phoenix basically in this blade, and is going to kill Rachel, and that's his task. And he has an implant that's controlling him and making him do it, and if he doesn't, it's going to end up being bad. So he goes and attacks the X-Men, and then Rachel realizes what's going on and disables the implant and stops him from having to do this. And they end up having a really interesting love affair that's kind of fun and keeps them kind of occupied with each other, which is kind of cool. Because we don't often get to see Rachel lighthearted or enjoying, a romance. So I kind of like the pairing. It was kind of weird and strange and just kind of worked, actually. But he kind of joins the group and kind of helps them along as they're, getting closer and closer to Shi'ar Space. And then you have the people that they were riding with in this ship kidnap Xavier because they find him at fault for things and want to kind of keep him send him to the Shi'ar for judgment or whatever. And they kidnap him, but what they didn't realize is that Darwin had escaped and was clinging onto the ship on the outside, and due to his, mutant ability to hyper-evolve, was able to stay alive. So that was kind of a cool setup and kind of a cool little moment there when you had Rachel realizing in their ship that Xavier was gone, and then realizing that Darwin was too, and that Darwin had actually was on his way to save him. So that was really fun. I liked that moment. And then one of the other things is when they finally got into Shi'ar Space, they met up with Starjammers, which, like I was telling you before, Corsair is the father of Havoc and Cyclops and Vulcan. So this is a treat because you don't often get to see Corsair interact with Alex much. It's always usually Cyclops, and Corsair. So this was really fun to kind of see them interact, and then for him to realize that his son was Vulcan and that they have to stop him. And, he's very conflicted, didn't know that his son survived. He has been holding this for, all these years. So they have to all come together and to save Xavier. So we have them coming there. We have a huge, the end of the series, kind of a huge battle with them. Vulcan ends up killing D'Ken as he wanted to, and takes the title of Emperor of the Shi'ar by force, and with Deathbird as his queen or empress. And so that was kind of like wow, this is a huge, status quo change. And while they're there in the Imcron crystal, he throws Xavier into the crystal to be kind of corrupted and consumed as D'Ken was. Vulcan hated D'Ken and he hated Xavier, and he's just full of a lot of hate. But what he didn't realize is that Darwin jumped in after him and then brought Xavier back. And instead of corrupting Xavier, it actually restored his mutant ability, his telepathic ability. So Xavier was all full telepathic control of everything and restored. So he's a bad mamma jamma, and he can walk too. And so there's a huge knockdown fight. People are, going off left and right. It's great, beautiful artwork. The stuff by Billy Tan was amazing. And then you have Corsair dying by his son. Vulcan kills him. And it's a really tragic moment, and it's startling to see it. And then the only way that they can stay alive is Lilandra decides to trap the X-Men that she can find into a ship and locks them into a return trip to Earth. And that's Xavier, that's Nightcrawler, that's Warpath, that's Darwin, and Hepzibah, which is a Starjammer who was actually dating Corsair. So all of them are returned to Earth immediately. But Havoc and Polaris and Rachel, they're stranded in Shi'ar Space. They are stranded there. They can't escape home. So they join up with the Starjammers. So this series, 12 issues, it was really fun, a really, enjoyable long arc. And I was really pleased that we got to get something like this. You don't often get a huge 12-part epic saga knowing it's going to be like this from a creator very often in the X universe. So this was a real treat, and I love cosmic stories, but I love that the X-Men got to take part of it. And it's the Shi'ar, which are very much tied to the X-Men. And this sets up a lot more for the rest of the cosmic world. You have a lot of the Realm of Kings, War of Kings are directly kind of relevant after this because you have Vulcan as the Emperor of the Shi'ar. So it's really, really fascinating. And then you get to see some interesting team-ups between Havoc, Polaris, and Marvel Girl as Starjammers. And that's kind of a role you didn't really see them in before. Spacefaring, pirates, superheroes, and that's really kind of fun. And although we didn't get to see them very often, anytime we did get a miniseries featuring them, that was aces. So I really liked this series. I thought it was really fun. You can get this in a whole huge trade paperback, and you should definitely buy it and enjoy it, because I certainly did. But if you haven't read it, you should read it. If you have, let me know what you think. Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were there parts better than others? What were your favorite parts? So comment below. Tell me what you liked about it. Like, share, subscribe, give it out to everybody. And as always, it's all geek to us. See you soon.